Hi, this is Morgan with the American SPCC. I'm here with Brad Brenner, co founder and COO of June Health, which is a behavior improvement app that empowers children and families to thrive by harnessing the power of technology for pediatric behavioral health. Brad, it's so good to have you here, and apologize in advance for my voice and any hacking. I'm getting over a cold.
No worries. Thanks for having me, Morgan. I'm excited to chat about behavioral health and neurodiversity.
Yeah, of course. So today we're going to be kind of focusing on neurodiversity, specifically as it relates to motivation. So I would love to hear about we'll just start with the basics. What are the different types of neurodiversity that you see to be the most common in children, and how does it, whether it's like in a common way that it affects motivation, or kind of the unique ways that the different disorders affect motivation?
Totally. And before I jump in, I do want to preface that, as one of the creators of June, I'm not a licensed clinician. So all my answers are really just based on my experience of building June Health and working with parents and therapists on creating motivational reward system for all types of kids with neurodiversity. But yeah, to jump in, what we've seen, working with all these families and therapists is the most common are ADHD, ASD, so autism, ODD, and GAD, generalized anxiety disorder. And what's interesting is that for each individual diagnosis, we see very similar motivational reward systems work. So when we built June, we didn't build, all these different type of systems to match diagnosis. We kind of built a holistic system and then tweaked the feature set in a way to address each child's needs. So like, for example, for ADHD, we know their motivational system is around novelty and excitement. So how we embedded that in June is making sure our motivational system always creates new things, new stories, new items, new adventures for the kids, because that's what keeps them engaged. That's what keeps them excited. For
Yeah.
ASD, it's structure, consistency, and ability to take ownership in a
Mhm.
reward system. So that's how we kind of empowered them to manage their daily routine and not have the parent kind of drive a lot of that behavior. ODD, generalized anxiety disorder, very similar to ASD. It's really taking ownership. It's having that structure, having that consistency, and feeling like they are owning the system versus being forced, if you will. And I think things do get tricky, and where there's a lot of uncertainty is when you have the mix of diagnoses. So if there's a child with ADHD and anxiety,
Yeah.
it's hard to pinpoint exactly the best motivational system, but that's kind of something we're still working through with our health system partners and therapists. So hoping to get a better solution there, where almost in a way parents can just input the diagnosis and we figure out exactly what's the ideal reward system and feature set that we need to enable for that family and for that child.
Yeah. And it's so interesting to think about what does motivate different types of neurodiversity. Like, for example, you're saying ADHD, which is something I have as well. It's like, it's the novelty and it's excitement. I could see a lot of parents being like, yeah, don't we all want to be excited all the time? Like,
Right.
life's not exciting. So, like, I would love to hear more about common mistakes you see parents making when it comes to expectations of children with neurodiversity.
Yeah. I think the biggest one is following routines and expectations to a T perfectly every day, every hour, every minute. That all these kids, their brains operate differently. And their brains operate probably differently than how their parents' brains operate. So having that flexibility and understanding is critical. And I think that's the most common mistake, and having that expectation that the child needs to conform to the parents' needs versus the other way around, I'd say is like the second largest. It should really be the parent more of understanding how the child is perceiving, routines and consistency, and then meeting them at their level versus be like,
Yeah.
no, this is how things should be. I want you to come and operate how I'm operating as a parent or how I expect you to operate. And I think the last small one is just expecting that medication is the cure. Like,
Mhm.
oh, my kid has ADHD, I'm gonna give him medication and that's it, problem solved. Not That's definitely not it. Like, medication can absolutely help, but there's still a lot more tools, resources you'll need to pull in to continuously support the child,
Yeah.
and make sure that they're improving, they're motivated, and they're excelling at the stage of where they are.
Yeah. And excelling is such a great transition to what you were making me think of. I think in terms of expectations too, there's also this expectation of like what defines a successful kid. And it could be like, good grades, doing really well in whatever activity they're doing, or, there's kind of like the gold standard of like a good kid.
Right.
And so I would love to hear your take a little more on, defining success that's unique for each individual child and what parents can do to really like support them being like their best selves, whether
Hmm.
that's at school,
Yeah.
in life, and work when they're of age.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think something really interesting is when we started out, we read, uh, there's a famous author, professor, and also her daughters are all like, famous, folks in business medicine, the Wojcinski family. Uh,
Mhm.
I believe it was Susan Wojcinski. She wrote a book about how to basically raise successful children. She has three that were extremely successful. And what it came down to was building habits early and fostering independence. Not hand holding, not basically having to be that parent, all the way until 18, but encouraging them to develop their own consistency and take almost control of their life at an early age, as early as 5 years.
Mhm. Yeah.
Not every parent has to. It really depends on the parents and family situation, but I think that's really what's key for setting up kiddos for success in school, work, and life. Um, and it really is around this concept of focusing that on the child and not just allowing the child to practice routines early, practice that consistency, develop positive habits at a young age, and learn how to adapt as they get older to run with that. And I think the number one thing that parents can do to best set up their kids for success with that consistency, and this is after interviewing hundreds of therapists and
Yeah.
parents, it's that parents need to be consistent themselves. Um, a lot of parents want quick solutions, and there really isn't one. And it takes hard work and determination, starting at an early age, for both the parent and child to set that child up for success. And if you have a plan, and if you want to help your child become independent and consistent, it starts with the parent becoming independent and consistent.
I know. It's easier said than done.
Right, right.
I'm thinking about the fact that my toddler ate gummies for breakfast because it was the only
Mhm.
thing.
Yeah, right.
Irrelevant. So tell us a little more about reward systems, like in general, and then also how that has kind of played into what you've built at June and, what's made it successful for families.
Totally. So the whole concept of June is taking a video game and making it the central point of a reward system that drives clinically similar positive change. So in a way of like the same sense of outcomes that medication or therapy would drive in a child. And the
Okay.
reason it's been successful is we did what no one else thought to do. We built it for the child, not for the parent. A lot of these chore apps, behavior apps, reward apps that you see, digital solutions online, they all are just centered around the parents' needs. Like, oh, as a parent, like, what do you want your kid to do? Here, build this. Great, your kid will do it now, but like, you just track it. Like, that does. It's not how it works. The kid needs
Interesting.
to feel empowered. The kid needs to take ownership, and kids love video games. So we gave them that power, empowerment, and ownership using a
Yeah.
language they understand really well. So with June, they they get dropped into this fairy tale land. They pick a pet. They bond with a pet, and it's called a doter, and they get to explore the land of June. And the more tasks, behaviors they work on and improve on, and consistency they build on, the more they unlock in this virtual world. The more they get to play the video game, and it really is kind of like a metaphor for their life, because a kid thinks, I'm playing something fun. I'm advancing in this digital world. I'm playing a video game. I'm interacting with my siblings, with my family. But as they're doing that, they're forced to also improve on the key things that therapists or parents are suggesting for them to improve on. So
Yeah.
it acts as a metaphor for their progression in real life.
That's so interesting. I love the way that you built it for the children, because it's true, because these are habits that they'll have to figure out well beyond when they're living with their parents, and
Right.
parents are just trying to like survive. So it's pretty task oriented. So I am curious if there are tasks that you think that maybe some parents should just not expect of children with neurodiversity. Like, are there kind of walls that you've noticed that, the kids playing and then they get up to this one level or whatever, and they're like, yeah, no, I can't do that.
Mhm.
That is now a chore. So I guess I'm just curious about that.
Yeah. It's a difficult question, and I think it's always dependent on the kid. So parents really need to make sure they personalize, tailor, and meet the kid where they are. So in that sense, I don't think there's ever certain tasks that should not be expected. I think for child A, there might be, let's say 3 tasks, but for child B, those 3 tasks could totally be fine. It really
Yeah.
comes down to just the child's ability to work through it. And if something isn't working, then try to understand, why that child is struggling with that task or that behavior. Maybe it needs to be broken down into smaller tasks. Maybe they struggle with
Yeah.
it for other emotional regulation reasons. And really just trying to uncover the why that child is struggling, versus setting the expectation like, oh, my kiddo just shouldn't be expected to do this. I think it differs from child to child.
Yeah. It's great advice, instead of just kind of writing it off as like, well, I guess they can't do that.
Hmm.
Figuring out a more unique way for them to learn it based on the way their brain works. I think that's a lot of, just in general with neurodiversity, how caregivers and teachers are just learning how to better, you know, meet them where they're at.
Right. Right.
Um, so speaking of the app, is there anything else you wanted us to share? Any like success stories, or just kind of your passion
Mhm.
for June?
Yeah, I think something really exciting and important that I want to share about it is that with June, we get a lot of pushback from families that, oh, you're just tricking the child. You're creating this extrinsic motivation system that's not necessarily empowering them to become independent on their own. You're using this forced game, if you will. I think something that's really important to keep in mind, and also exciting for us, is that while yes, you need to start somewhere, and like a lot of tasks, a lot of routines are really difficult for children to just jump out of the gate and do. Like if you
Yeah.
want your kiddo to wake up, brush their teeth, make their bed, be dressed all before 7:30 so they can catch a bus or be ready for school, and they've struggled with this, their entire life, that's not going to happen. You need to start piecemealing the routine together and using the reward system that works for them, with the eventual goal of having them build that habit internally, building that own sense of responsibility where they now feel empowered to do it, not because you're telling them, not because a reward system is making them or is motivating them to, but because they want to themselves. And I think where we're trying to go, and where we've already been hearing success from families, is that with June, we can get kids to become intrinsically motivated in the long run. We've had a few families who've almost graduated from our program, where they started, maybe a year, 2 years ago when we initially launched. with the app. And the kid at first was all excited and only doing the things because they wanted to excel in the game. But because they consistently practice, they can consistently develop that routine consistency and also a sense of well-being and independence by doing it. They were able to kind of stop playing June, but still maintain the habits. And at the end of the day, they graduated from the game because the child transitioned from becoming extrinsically motivated by a external reward system, June, and now is intrinsically motivated because their own innate desire to continue on that routine, on that habit system. So that's what we're really excited about, is like
Yeah.
not create the system that just sucks kids for from 6 to 18, but actually having a defined endpoint where we help them transition from extrinsic motivation to intrinsic and graduate them almost
Yeah.
as like a school, like you're graduating from this reward system, from this routine system into your own system now, where you can take ownership and you feel good about it and you don't need something to tell you how or what or when to do things.
Yeah. And it's important for parents and other adults to remember that, like, we all had our own learning curve for different parts of our lives, and some of it came more natural, some of it was harder, like I probably for a long time only would really clean up if people were coming over, and then the more you do that, the quicker you get, and the more you're like, I really like having it clean around. And so
Exactly.
there's, it looks so different for lots of people. And I think that the June app is just like a facilitated way to do things that a lot of us like kind of did anyways to, to figure these things out. No one's up like, oh, I'm so excited to like take the trash out. But I am excited to like, for this to not smell, and it's worth it. And then you just like stuff like that, it just adds up. And so I think that it's always important for parents to have those fair expectations of their kids to have like the learning curve that they had,
Totally.
We all took the same amount of time to grow up. A
Exactly.
year is a year.
Yeah,
So, I really appreciate that point. Thank you for adding that.
my pleasure.
Yeah, and so Brad, it's been great to have you here. The June Health app is available for download on our website. You can find it under apps we love and on our Trusted Parenting Network page. So thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to continuing to work together.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Morgan.